Okay, thank you so much for having our superstar lawyer today. Today we have Anisa Arra. She's running a boutique law firm located in Mississauga, Ontario, and she's one of the top lawyers in her industry. She's dealing with the real estate laws and some slightly family laws slash construction law, and lots of other things. Thank you so much, Anisa, for giving us some time today to explain to my community about the well. So, if you want to know who's Anisa, so can you give us some background about yourself, Anisa?
Thanks, Hani. I really appreciate the invitation for this short interview about wills. I practice from Mississauga, but we are virtual all over Ontario. I'm a real estate lawyer primarily, but I do wills, estates, and powers of attorney, as well as you mentioned, construction law and separation agreements. I graduated from Osgoode Hall Law School. I started our law firm in 2017, and it has grown organically since then. And I would do nothing else.
Good for you.
I love what I do.
Good for you. Good for you. So, you know what? I know you're busy. Your busy schedule is really tight, and I know that. But you always give people, uh, you pay attention to people and their concerns and questions. So, I would like to take this opportunity to discuss with you about one of the practice you're doing, which is writing wills. Because actually, you know what? My community raised a concern lately about how do write a will, and is it important or not important? So can you give us like some insight about the this one, like what's the will and how we should do it? Is it important or not?
The will is important. It is the story you will tell others at the end of your life. It is how you will tell people what they mean to you and what the property means to you. So you can make gifts based on the will, or you can leave it to the people that need it the most, or even organizations that are important to you. If you don't have a will, the property will be handled by an act of Ontario, the Intestate Succession Act, and it has its own rules and it will be handled just that way. There won't be any other flexibility. So if you want to make particular gifts in your own way, you need a will.
Need a will. Okay. So what makes a will valid? What I mean is that, like, I can sit down here and write my will that says, well, I want to give all I have to Anisa, for instance. How would make my will valid? Yeah, so
Valid will, it must be signed by the testator at a time when they have capacity and understand their assets. And it must be signed by two witnesses that do not benefit under the will.
So
So
two people who do not benefit under the will has to, witness
to
such a will. Yes, and
it's done at the lawyer's office and witnessed by the lawyer or law clerks in the office who have no interest, financial interest in the will.
not no financial interest. Yeah, that's good. So, uh, how about people, or how about kids like under 18? In terms of the will, can we include them in the will? Like in
Yes, of course. Most of the wills are done by parents to take care of the children, but children under Ontario law cannot directly inherit money.
Mhm.
It must be through different processes, such as a trust or the guardian of property for the child. Uh, and if there is no one like that, it can be paid into court until the child turns 18. If the amount is under 10,000 and there is a surviving parent, you can leave it to the surviving parent who will keep the money in trust until the child turns 18.
So in that case, like the parents cannot touch this money unless the kid go above 18.
Yes, they can invest it though. They can
Mhm.
invest it, not spend it, but use reasonable means to invest it and grow the money. So the child has the best return when they turn 18, but they cannot use it to pay their bills or their personal expenses.
Got you. What if the kids are disabled in any kind of disability? Like, What if the children have some sort of a disability? What's going to happen in that case?
If the disability continues after they turn 18, usually the property will be managed by a guardian of property if they have mental incapacity, because any physical disability will not prevent them from inheriting the money. But
But
if they have mental
mentally, yeah,
incapacity, it has to be held in trust and managed by a trustee in accordance with their fiduciary duties.
with the fiduciary is okay. Uh, People often hear, some sort of a jargons or, kind of big words such as like a trustee, executor, guardian, next of kin. So, what all this for
Trust
the normal people? Yeah,
Trustee of an estate trustee, estate administrator, and executor, usually or executrix for a female, usually means the same thing. So it's the person that will handle the administration of the estate. Executor is referred to a person that is named under a will. Estate trustee is a more general person, even it can be court appointed or under the Intestate Succession Act. So it's a more general term, executor only for wills, but they do the same thing. They
got it.
administer the estate. Next of kin is your next relative. It's usually your parents, your sisters, but if they're all deceased or they don't exist, usually it's measured by going upwards to the most common ancestor and then going downwards to the relative.
But what if somebody dies here in Canada? Because, majority of us came from or immigrated from somewhere. What if I pass away and I don't have any next of kin? What's going to happen to me? Can somebody be appointed, or can I appoint somebody in my will to be my next of kin, although it's not a blood related?
In your will, you can appoint any beneficiary you want. There are stories we hear people leaving everything to the cat or the dog
Yeah,
or even charity. So you can leave it to anyone. In terms of next of kin, your estate trustee will have a duty to locate your next of kin. So they can look all over the world for your next relative that have a right to inherit your property. If there is no one, then the money will go to the government.
mm. So how about that scenario? Like, because just one person raised the concern. They said, what if the both parents passed away at the same time? God forbid, like in a car accident or some, and they left behind kids under 18. What's going to happen in that case?
In that case, if they have named, usually in the will, parents will name a guardian for the children.
Guardian means somebody will take care of them after they
So
pass away.
if they have a will, the property will be distributed in accordance with the will. So they may have said two-thirds to the children, one-third to my sister or brother, whatever they've decided under the will. If there is no will, then the property will go to the children, but obviously will go under a guardian or a trustee, or the money will be paid into court and the person will take care of the children, that is the guardian of the children. When children turn 18, the property, they will take that property. Absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of property, Anisa, I know you are the superstar in that area. So I'm not going to say I challenge your mind because we
Right.
always learn from you. So the most two common ownership for real estate would be like joint tenant or tenant in common. And joint tenant, as I'm like, as you teach the whole world, like people who already have the right of survivalship. So in would the will override that right or not? So okay, let me ask the question differently. I own a property with somebody. Okay, it's under joint tenant. Okay, and I pass away. Okay, I know automatically by law, my portion or my share would go to the other person who shared the property with. In that particular case, what if I decided to write a will and give my son my share? I said, like, my 50% share in this property will go to my son. Would that work or not?
So yeah, there will be a contradiction in there.
Exactly.
You're owning joint property jointly, which the legal tenure means that once a person passes away, an owner passes away, the other will get automatic ownership of the full property.
Correct.
the other hand, you're thinking, you're not understanding that you're thinking, I have 50% of this property, I'm leaving it to my son. You can, your son will not inherit it, will not
Will
be.
not inherit it. Yeah.
Joint tenancy falls outside of the will.
Outside of that. So the will in particular will never overwrite
No.
what's in yeah, in the joint tenancy. How about if it's tenant in common in that particular case? What's going to happen in that case?
So tenancy common, then that share can be passed down to your beneficiaries. Your 50% goes through the estate, and then it will go to the person that is named under the estate.
Gotcha. So what would be included in the will? Like, is it like something like real estate, bank accounts, money, jewelry, and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there are different ways of doing a will. It can be every property can be distributed differently. You say this, my family home will go to my parents, for example, or my wife. My this bank, whatever is in this bank account, can go to my father or my brother. So you can do it that way. Divide property separately and give it to different people, or you can say you can put all the property is in a pool it together, and then the estate will pay the mortgages, any debts, all the debts that the deceased person owned, and then pass the residue into the beneficiaries. Sometimes people will say, we'll divide it equally among the children. That's all
Exactly.
we want to
That's
do.
all they say. Yeah.
So this is done usually by the residue of the estate. But there are the will, you have complete freedom
Hmm.
with well. That's why people prefer it, because it's a way to divide the property the way you want it to, instead of just being divided as a residue.
Gotcha, gotcha. So in that particular case, because as you've mentioned, like bank account, and bank account is not static; it's just kind of dynamic. That what I mean by that, like money goes in and goes out, so you don't know exactly how much. So when you name the bank account, like it says bank account RBC 123, and whatever left in there, it's gonna go to that particular person. So you don't need to specify how much money in that particular bank
No,
account.
yeah. Usually we leave the wills pretty open to allow the people to grow their wealth, because many people make their will when they are young, in their 40s or 30s, and they may grow their wealth significantly by the time of their death. So we leave it open. Usually the bank accounts will go into the residue, but we record all the property, all the bank accounts, everything of value they own, because the will can be challenged based on the person not understanding what they own. So we're
Exactly.
going to have a list of their assets, and they will sign that I understand I own all these assets. So in case it gets challenged by a beneficiary, we can say they understood, they had capacity to understand everything that they owned, to make the will more valid. But usually we don't make the wills, we don't separate bank accounts or property that way, just to let the will grow, to let the property grow, and not have to change the will constantly every time they change a bank account.
I see what you mean. So how often do we have to update the will?
I usually tell my clients to update whenever they want to change beneficiaries, or they inherited something, or inherit, or their wealth has changed significantly to a point that they need to make a new will. But otherwise, it doesn't need to be updated. But for example, if a beneficiary passes away, that was a big beneficiary in your will, then you need to probably amend that will, unless you have provided for what happens in the event of their death, which we usually do. Normally, every 10 years, you should probably review your will and see if it still reflects your wishes, because every will must reflect your final wishes. So if you made a will 20 years ago, it might not be very reflective.
Sure. So what if the witness passed away and somebody from the beneficiaries start to challenge the will?
That is a good question. Usually, a will is probated without a hearing. The estate trustee or the executor will make an application, but if a beneficiary challenges the will, then there will be a hearing. So the court will have to hear from the witnesses. The witnesses will sign an affidavit, and that affidavit will survive their death. And there will be witnesses that saw that witness signed, such as in a law firm where there are other people, and it's a controlled environment. So there will be a hearing. It will be determined on the particular facts of the case.
Mm.
Normally, it should not affect the validity of the will.
So it's gonna still valid, but as a when it's a challenge, like you still have you need some time until you prove the authenticity of the will, and everybody will get their share.
Yeah, so the affidavit as evidence in court is considered hearsay. But the moment a person is not there to testify anymore, it will count as their direct testimony. So the affidavit will ensure the affidavit of witnesses will ensure that the will survives.
So, okay, back again to the trustee and executor. What's the criteria? Do they have to be like a permanent residence here in Canada, or Canadian citizen? Like, what if, like, I'm from Egypt? Can I ask my brother, like, who's from Egypt and he's an Egyptian citizen, to be a trustee? And how would that work?
Um, for someone to be an estate trustee under a will, it doesn't have to be a resident of Ontario. But if they're not a resident of Ontario, they have to post a bond with the court. Sometimes it can be even twice the value of the estate for
What
them
the
to administer the estate. If you don't have a will, the court will never appoint someone who's not a resident of Ontario. Actually, never, I shouldn't say. Maybe under rare circumstances, if all the beneficiaries are in agreement, they can appoint someone who's not a non-resident. But for someone who's from Egypt, lives in Egypt, be named under the will, they will accept him, but he has to post a bond. So there are insurance companies sometimes that will pay this bond, but sometimes they might ask for the premiums to be paid 3 years in advance. So it's a bit more costly.
You see what you mean?
Someone is not a non-resident, but non-resident means someone that lives in the Commonwealth. So if someone lives in England or in another province,
Yeah, New Zealand, yeah.
they don't have to post a bond.
Uh-huh. I
Yeah.
see. So, speaking of which, what if I write a will here in your office, and I live in Ontario, my driver license is in Ontario, and I decided, like, 2 years from now to move to BC. Will the will still be valid over in BC or not?
Yes, it should still be valid.
Still be valid. Still
Yeah.
be valid. Okay. So, if somebody from Saskatchewan and he wants to use your service to do the will, can you do it for them?
It has to be for property that's in Ontario,
Mhm.
because as lawyers we're licensed in one province
One
only.
province, not
Yeah, I'm I'm a lawyer for Ontario, but I don't have jurisdiction for assets that are in Saskatchewan.
that's so pretty much like everything in Ontario. However, like the valuable information you shared with us today is applicable across the country. So if somebody watching us here from Montreal or from BC can still benefit from this valuable information.
I cannot say that because I'm basing under Ontario law, Ontario acts. I cannot be an expert in other provinces. They should check. Normally, the laws are very similar across Canada.
Mhm.
They say it is better that they check the
Check with
laws.
somebody from a local lawyer over there.
Act of Quebec, especially Quebec, that has a completely
Different.
different
Yeah.
system, civil law system. They should check their own laws.
I see what you mean. And then, it's lots of questions actually, comes in, and you know, uh, I don't want to leave this, up in the air, without. What if, I know, like again, like I'm gonna use your valuable time. One last question: what if somebody die without a will?
If someone dies without a will, then the property will be divided according to the Intestate Succession Act.
What does that mean?
First, everything will go to the spouse. If they have no children,
Hmm.
but they have a spouse, everything will go to the spouse.
Okay.
that have a spouse and children, then it will be divided between the spouse and the children. But there are different, for example, if the estate is under 200 or until 200,000, then everything still goes to